and welcome to this week's live weekly warm-up. We're going strong, doing the staying at home and isolating, which gives me plenty of time to think of cool things to talk to you guys about and give you some tips and tricks for your clarinet playing. Hopefully you're getting tons of practice time in, which can be a lot of fun and a good way to keep yourself entertained during these really weird times. But thanks so much for being here and watching this. And today, we're going to be going over a technique warm-up. This is a very, very standard sort of scale pattern that I'm sure you've heard of before, even if you haven't played it before. And what we're going to be doing today is just scales in thirds. But I want to talk a little bit more about how scale patterns work so that you can maybe come up with your own patterns and get the full benefit out of this very common and popular exercise. So the scales in thirds, I'll go ahead and play it just a little bit. Maybe if you're not familiar with the name, but you're familiar with the sound. So I'm going to do it on C major, and I'm just going to play one octave to make it really simple, just so you can hear it, and then we'll talk more about it. So you'll notice that the pattern is probably pretty familiar. And what the pattern actually is you start on the first note of a major scale, then you skip a note, and then you go back to the note you skipped, and then skip the note that you already played and sort of work your way up the scale, going up and down and up and down, and interlinking like that. Scale patterns are really neat because it gives you lots of different ways to go about the scale rather than just playing straight up the scale and straight down the scale like we do when we're doing just a normal 2-octave scale. By changing up the patterns, it sort of forces you to get even more familiar with the notes. You may have noticed that I played this particular pattern a little bit on the slow side compared to what you are used to hearing. Maybe you're used to hearing people being like, and sort of having that more flashy, fast scale. Scales and thirds in particular are one of those things that a lot of people will use to sort of warm up and just sort of like rattle through it really quickly, which is fine if you're just sort of testing your readout and like seeing if your fingers are moving and stuff. But when we're doing our actual warm-up, we want to be much more particular about it. Just like we always do with our warm-ups, it's all about getting the very, very best clarinet playing. So if you're just sort of rattling through it and not thinking about how you're playing it, then you're not going to be getting the best results probably. So a couple pointers to think about when playing this particular scale pattern is to make sure that you're not emphasizing the beats too much and getting sort of where each like leap up of a third is really, really emphasized. Sometimes it's actually helpful to think about emphasizing the offbeats a little bit more. That was probably a little bit too much because then the offbeat sounded more emphasized. But in order to get it to sound really, really even, it might be helpful to put a little bit more weight on those offbeats and really think about those leading to the next downbeat. That's the way music tends to work anyways in terms of groupings and stuff, but that's a topic for another video. So that's pretty much the main things to be thinking about on this, is just keeping everything really even. You don't have to go too fast, so you can really think about the great sound quality. And then of course, because this is a technique warm-up, it's really important to be thinking about where your fingers are going and how your fingers are moving. So always having that super minimal, very precise finger motion, keeping everything close to the keys and very, very relaxed, natural, and easy. So finally, I just want to mention a little bit more about patterns in general. So that was all the stuff about like how to play this particular pattern and the things to be focusing on with all of your technique warm-ups. But scale patterns in general are really neat because what it is it's sort of this template or this rubric for all kinds of different things that you can do. So this one in particular is the first note of the scale, third note, second, fourth, third, fifth, 4th, 6th, and so on and so forth. So again, we're sort of skipping that one and then coming back and laddering our way up. So that's just one type of scale. This is called scales and thirds, but you can come up with all kinds of your own patterns. You can do maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we've done that one on the weekly warm-ups before. That's another one of my favorites. Another one we've definitely done is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. And you can see how what it's doing is taking a little snippet or a little pattern, and then it's just transposing it up as you go. So the scales and thirds, the little pattern is 1, 3. So you're playing one note, skipping a note and playing the next note. So you do 1, 3, and then you transpose that up a step. 2, 4, and then up a step. 3, 5, and then up a step. 4, 6, and so on and so forth. And then you end up completing the whole scale. So with that in mind, you're able to now create your own scale patterns, or even more exciting, you can take this scale pattern and transpose it to all of the other keys just by exchanging those notes. And this sort of gets into how to transpose for different exercises and stuff, which I have a great video that I go really in depth on that. It's called like Crash Course Transposition, I think. So if you just search that in YouTube or check through my videos, it was a little while ago from when I'm live now. But it is a really good video that goes really in depth with all that transposition stuff. So if you want more information about how to take this exercise and all of the weekly warm-ups and apply them to different keys and different major scales, then that's the video for you. And of course, if you have any questions about any of that or anything else that I went over in this video, then you can leave that in the comments and I will be sure to answer those. Thanks so much for watching this live weekly warm-up, and I'll see you next week. One real quick note, you may have noticed that this is an hour earlier than I've been doing it. I'm now at 9:30 a.m. Central Time, and I think I'm going to make this a permanent transition. So if you have your calendar reminder set for when the live weekly warm-up is, go ahead and move that an hour earlier. And of course, if you watch the replays, then you can still watch the replays whenever after that. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next week at the new time of 9:30 a.m.